Okay, so welcome to this Cambridge Marketing College webinar. I'm Neil Wilkins, one of the tutors at the college, and we're going to talk in this session about content optimization, not the typical old school style of content optimization, but actually now using AI tools, which will enable you to take continuous improvement to the next level. It really will. And that's what we're going to cover in this session as we go deep into some of the tools and some of the processes and the thinking, really, which is actually relatively straightforward when you take it right back to its bare bones on this concept of content optimization. So we're going to look at how we can refine and improve your content with a blend and a mixture of AI, data, and insight. So it's a little bit AI, it's a little bit human, and it's also this kind of hybrid thing in the middle where you're going to be working with the AI tools to enable some really great decision making. So what we're going to talk about here is how to analyze performance of your content, how to test different variations because you might want to get a slightly different flavor and see how that performs versus another one. We're going to tailor content to audience behavior so that we can actually get some performance results coming through the other end, because otherwise it's just content. And if it doesn't lead anywhere, then obviously there's pretty much no point doing it. So we need to ensure that we can actually engage with the right kind of audiences and actually inspire and enthuse the kind of passion we have for our products and services so that they do something about it. So we're going to use AI tools to help us to do that. I'm also going to give you some clear methods, hopefully some step-by-step guides for improving blogs, newsletters, social posts, and pretty much any kind of organic content that you're looking to do for your customers and for your audiences. So that's kind of really where we're headed in this session. So the learning objectives, I always have to put some objectives in here that I'm kind of aiming, hopefully, to help you to understand. And all of these things are coming through from, what I would term best practice, as we've seen the emergence of AI tools to help us with this stuff, better content creation, measuring it, monitoring it, and continuously improving it. We're seeing some really good practice coming through, and we've got a toolkit at the college. We've got some content usability guidelines coming through. There's updates and very frequent updates now to a lot of the digital marketing texts and theories that we're very familiar with. So what I've done here is I've kind of pulled together from these various sources all of the best bits to save you having to kind of figure it all out for yourself. So hopefully I've got sort of captured and got here everything that's going to be really useful for you to understand how content optimization can work across different channels. And as I say, from everything from sort of email newsletters through to writing blogs, everything in between as well. So we're going to look at AI tools to test and improve your existing content, and then look to be able to analyze the data that comes out from using these tools to identify areas for refinement. And you'll hear me, I've already said it the once, but did it very quickly, but you'll always hear me kind of talking about this phrase, continuous improvement. You don't just do content optimization the once. This is an ongoing thing. Once you open this Pandora's box to successful marketing, you almost can't shut it. So it becomes something that is really very much integral to the work that you do once you know this stuff is here. And it really is, it should be your ally, it should be your friend, and it's kind of designed in that way. So we're going to then figure out a repeatable framework that will enable you step by step every time you publish a piece of content to have a kind of a framework or a model, if you like, behind you just as a checkpoint so that you can ongoing optimize everything that you do. So every time you publish a piece of content in any format, you're constantly aware and mindful that this needs to be better and more effective than the version I did before. And I now know that AI tools can help me. That's kind of the bottom line, really, of what we're trying to achieve here. So what is content optimization? What do we actually mean? I mean, it's one of those phrases, we've had things like, search engine optimization. This word optimization has come through in content creation and in marketing, over the last sort of couple of decades, really, as we've tried to really cut through the chaos and the noise of online or digital content. So it's always been there, but it's becoming a real go-to now for successful marketers. And it means the improving of performance ongoing, little incremental performance improvements, not rewriting everything. So it doesn't mean you've got to go back to basics. It doesn't mean you've got to kind of reinvent yourself. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution of what you do. And it's the process of making your content more effective over time. And it's your existing content. So this isn't kind of writing new stuff and actually doing stuff, completely differently. This is actually about saying, okay, this is what we've actually created so far to date, to this point. Could we actually make incremental improvements, little kind of tiny improvements that would move us forward positively? That's optimization. It's little continuous, constant steps of improvement. It is not saying we've got to completely rebrand and reinvent ourselves. That's a revolution. We're talking evolution here. And in an AI version of this, what we're talking about now is that it needs to be data led, has to be data driven. So we've got to get some numbers and some performance stats coming out of what we've done so far. It needs to be iterative. So that means basically it's working alongside us. It's kind of constantly reinventing what we do in a better way. And then it's personalized. So your version of this is not going to be the same as my version. That piece of content you've got there is not going to be the same going forward. It is very, very much personalized for the organization, for you and me, and also particularly in line with the audience that we're serving. And this, of course, is the beauty of AI. It enables personalization, or you're probably hearing the phrase now, hyper personalization, where we're literally getting down to thinking about customers as one-to-one individuals because AI enables it. So we'll see that as we go through this. So, why do AI tools change the game? Why are we now talking in this way of, optimizing using AI tools rather than just the traditional testing and having a little look and looking at the data and the insights and then kind of making it up as we go along? Well, AI, I'm sure you're very, very aware, will enable you and allow you to analyze large data sets very, very quickly. You can do this literally supercharged. It is so much easier to do this now at scale, which, of course, if you're sending out a lot of content, you're publishing a lot of stuff. If you're a thought leader or you've got a lot of campaigns running, being able to do this with AI enables you to do this across the board, not just with your one little pet project, but you can do it with everything, which is great. What it'll also do is it'll identify far quicker than you or I could as a human trends and engagement gaps. Now, that second bit, trends, we all know, trends is an important thing because it's monitoring how stuff is kind of evolving over time. But engagement gaps for me is a really important one. So it is when you have something like a click-through rate, for example, that is actually evidence of engagement because somebody can open up your email. I was having a conversation a little bit earlier this morning with somebody, and we were kind of talking about the importance of actually behavior, not just somebody, sort of opening an email because that's kind of relatively easy to do and stimulate, but actually getting them to do something is the key. So those kind of engagement gaps, AI can help us to spot why is this particular email not engaging? Why do people not click through? And then we can kind of identify and uncover those opportunities and improve them. That's kind of where AI is going to come in. It'll also suggest new variations automatically, or it can if you prompt it correctly. And of course, then it'll enable us to tailor messages to audience intent. Now, by that, really what I mean is that the most likely positive outcomes AI can spot. You and I would be able to spot, well, that one worked better than that one. If we were sending out 2 styles of email, well, I can see that one's got better data than that one. But actually, I'm not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure really why the behavior of the person receiving it was slightly different with that version versus that version. AI can enable the audience intent by kind of figuring out, because it does what's called multivariate analysis. So it can look at multiple things at once. It'll enable us to be able to make good deduction and prioritize what we need to change based on how likely it is that somebody's going to respond versus a previous version. So, what we're saying here overall, and there's a really lovely quote here from Gartner, is that AI doesn't replace creativity, but it directs it. So if you think about all those things that are enabled by AI tools changing the game, it's not saying that the AI is going to come up with better content than you. It's not going to say it's going to take your job. What it's saying is it's going to help us to direct our creativity and our thinking and our innovative thoughts and campaign ideas and branding kind of sort of passions and things like that, but it's going to direct those things. It's not going to replace it. It's going to say, okay, this is where, based on statistics, I think we should be going. This is where, if you want to get a better performance out of your campaign or your blog or your email, this is where I think, the most evidence is pointing that this is what we need to change based on the likely outcome of the thing that you're publishing. And that is about stimulating somebody to do something, a customer to behave in a certain way, click through, purchase, whatever it happens to be. So this is where AI doesn't replace creativity, but it directs our attention. That's key. So I'm going to take you now through some of the ways now to get you kind of thinking about where this fits and where this sits. Now, not all of this is going to apply to each and every one of you. So what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of be patient with the stuff that you're not involved in, and obviously go deep in your thinking and translate the stuff that does apply to you. So if you're not doing newsletters, not sending emails, etc., then just kind of, yeah, just kind of roll with that one. But if that is something that, as an example, is very pertinent to the work you do, then that's where I'm going to really try and sort of hone in the attention for you. So we're going to go through a number of different kind of sections or steps here, so that step by step you are able to kind of put this into practice. Because it's all very well saying, oh yes, optimize your content using AI tools, but you then got to think about, okay, how do I do that? So that's what we're going to cover now. So step one is the audit of your existing content. This is preparing for optimization. You can't just start optimizing. You've got to audit your existing content. So this is where you're going to use tools like Google Search Console, SEMrush, Ahrefs, Buffer Analytics. There are many, many others that will help you to audit your existing content. In other words, just kind of checking, where are we now? What is our baseline? What are we going to start to work from to enable this optimization or this continuous improvement? And the kinds of things when you do audit that you're going to be looking at here are engagement metrics. I always start with that one because anybody can send out a piece of content. I mean, let's face it, blogging is easy. Creating content for a newsletter is easy. This stuff is not difficult to do. But doing it well and actually getting the right level of expected engagement, in other words, people actually responding and behaving and doing something, that's different. So click-through rates, dwell time, scroll depth, down a particular piece of content, all these things are important because they're showing how much somebody's engaging with a piece of content. Conversion actions, what are the things then that people are actually responding to, and they're actually then clicking through to the next step in the journey that you've crafted for them. The topic relevance and freshness, again, if you're building a thought leadership position in your brand, because that's important to you, then topic relevance of the things that you're publishing and sending out, you want to audit that. You want to make sure that this stuff is fresh, it's relevant, it's current, makes you look informed, it's kind of appropriate to the audience. And audience interaction as well, the comments, the shares, the sentiment, particularly in socials, that is what you're going to be looking to audit. So kind of getting a long sort of form, if you like, of different things that could be relevant to you. So if you're doing a little kind of follow along task here and trying to kind of put this into your own kind of situation or your own context, then I'd say, well, why don't you just list the 3 most important content assets that you've got? And then think about maybe one just off the top of your head without getting the data, because obviously you're going to now need to go and find all this stuff as you begin your audit. Think about one that underperforms. You probably would know that if you've got some content that you've been kind of working with for a while, you'll probably know a particular channel or a particular piece of content that tends to not sort of hit the mark, tends to not get to kind of where you would want it to get to consistently. So that would be one. You just note it on your piece of paper or on your screen, because then you can obviously start to sort of build up the storytelling here as you translate it into that example for yourself. And as I say, all of us are going to be different as we're going through this. So step two then is defining the success metrics. So with that piece of content that you're thinking of, you've got it in your mind's eye or you've written it down, think about what would successful metrics look like. So if it's a blog, it's likely to be something like average time on page, and then you can set a goal. So it could be, I want to increase this by optimizing the blog by, say, 15%. So the average time spent on the page reading the blog is improving. I want to improve it by 15%. That would be a success metric. If it was a newsletter going out with email, it could be open rate. Maybe you want to improve that by, say, 10%. If it's a social post, almost certainly, because the clue is in the name, social. So you want to increase or improve the engagement rate, and maybe don't push that one too hard. Maybe go for something like 5% improvement. Now, what you're needing to do here, obviously, is you're setting the boundaries of expectation. Because with the best will in the world, you're not going to get 100% improvement. I mean, if you did that, you've got the secret sauce and you're going to become a billionaire. That kind of thing doesn't really exist. So what we're looking for here is tangible, meaningful kind of success metrics where, yeah, on a good day with the wind blowing in the right direction, with some great content, this would be a good outcome. That would be a good success measure. So that's step two. So having then sort of set up the things you're going to audit, you're now saying and setting the boundary around those by saying, well, this is the kind of level I'm potentially looking to optimize with. And then step three is setting a baseline. So you've decided what you're focusing on. You've got some level of expectation here of where you're headed. So now you're going to set a baseline. So you can use existing analytics to benchmark where you're starting from. So if it was a blog on your website, for example, you're going to go to your Google Analytics, GA4, and you're going to look at your site analytics. You're going to say, okay, what are we doing right now? And if it is the time spent on the page, what is that on average for the last 10 or 15 blogs that we've done? Getting that data, setting the baseline before you begin. If it's email that you're talking about, obviously this data exists in MailChimp or Klaviyo or whatever platform you're using. And if you're doing social media, you would probably be sort of sending out or scheduling out through a social media aggregator, something like Sprout Social or Hootsuite. Again, whichever one you're using, this will enable you to set your baseline. And the baseline is, where are we now? It's a simple question. You're just putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is where we are. So really, the tip I would say here is if you can start to kind of export data monthly to track incremental improvements, because as soon as you know this stuff and as soon as you start to begin optimizing, things will change. Hopefully, they'll go in a positive northerly direction and it'll get better and better, but it might not. And if it doesn't, that's learning too. So we're not looking for perfection here, but what we're looking to do is, having set a baseline, knowing what a key success measure is, knowing what we're focusing on with our piece of content as an example to take through this step-by-step process, we are now going to start tracking it. So we're committing here to continuously watching what we do. Now, you might say, well, Neil, it's all very well, but monthly doesn't give me the feedback I want. I want to be doing this weekly or even daily. Depends obviously how much content you're doing with this particular channel you're talking about. So again, you can translate the reality into your world here. But it's important to know that once you set out on this journey, you're not going to stop. This is an ongoing process. So setting the baseline shows you your ground zero. It shows you where you're beginning. And that's absolutely vital, because wherever you go now, you can monitor against it. So there's the improvement or hopefully success that will come from this baseline. So that's step three. Step four then is content performance analysis. So now we're going to start to really ask the questions, which topics perform best? Questions like, where did the customers or the target audience or users drop off? What language patterns lead to better engagement? Am I able to see the real subtleties that maybe as a human I can't see, but with AI, remember we're using AI here to analyze and refine, you can plug in the prompt into your AI to analyze and say, I want to know why this particular piece performed better than these previous pieces. And I'm going to give this into AI, so ChatGPT, for example, and I'm going to say, can you summarize and then export into some kind of database or CSV files or Excel or something like that? Or can you give me a written report about where and how this particular piece of content has outperformed or underperformed versus my baseline? So you're starting to look here, and other tools are available, Market Muse or phrase.io, will kind of give you this kind of sense of, okay, I'm starting to get a feel for what's going on. So this is content performance analysis. It doesn't mean you've got all the answers, but you're starting now to use an AI tool to say, okay, we've put this next piece of content out. I've already got my baseline. I know what success looks like. I know which kind of things that we've been auditing. So I kind of got a sense of almost control over this. I know where we're going with this. Now, the tools now are going to start to get plugged in to enable you to uncover. This is a little bit like being a detective and doing some kind of forensic detective work and saying, okay, I've got a tool here that can actually show me why and where this particular piece of content versus these other examples, why this performed as it did. And this is about literally plugging into, for example, ChatGPT and saying, plugging in the reports, the actual pieces of content, the kind of the nuances, if there's visuals and stuff are going with it, if there's titles or headers or subject lines or whatever, you've got to plug the whole thing in. And then it can just work its magic. I say just work its magic. It is genius and it is so, so powerful. So I shouldn't ever probably use the word just, but you know what I mean? It's not going to involve you necessarily at this content performance analysis stage. So you're letting the AI now take the lead for a moment, but you need to ask it the questions that will enable you to get closer to the success measure, success target, the expectation you had that you set in that earlier step. So this is about doing it in a very clear way, not just saying, hey, I need to optimize stuff. Where do I begin? It's about really going down this one very clear track, because then the AI knows what it's got to perform against, what you're asking it to do, and it can keep really focused. This is about laser focus. It's really important. Step five then is saying, oh, okay, this could be about the actual data and the numbers and the click throughs, but actually, what I want to make sure as well, because I could just be super clever and just generate loads of high performing content that ticks the boxes in terms of numbers, but we're going way, way off our target when it comes to the actual brand position. Or maybe we're actually talking a very different style of story. We're getting responses, we're getting engagement, but it's outside of our branding. So we need to kind of make sure that at the same time as we're doing the kind of objective numbers focus here, we actually need to make sure that we've got the right tone of voice with the content as well. So this is about balancing the objective, the numbers, with the subjective, because you could write content and produce content that ticks all the boxes for those success metrics, but actually loses its way in terms of content. You go way off brand. The tone of voice is like, who are these guys? They sound and look completely different to what they did. And of course, then you've lost the game. So this is about balancing the sentiment, how people feel as a result of engaging with your content, with the actual performance of the content at the same time, objectively. So there are some practical steps that you can again be looking to uncover here. So identifying language patterns associated with successful positive sentiment. And it might be that certain phrases, certain styles of writing tick the box objectively, so they get people clicking through because they understand what you're talking about. But you're actually at the same time making them feel good, helping them feel positively towards the brand. So your sentiment analysis, that really subjective emotional thing, actually increases too. So there's two subtle things going on here. And the beauty of this, of course, is as a human, it'd be really hard to spot which one was making the difference, but the AI will spot it for you. This is where it can really come in and supercharge, as I've said before, this performance analysis. Really, really important. Step six, then, as we're using AI to kind of analyze and maybe start to refine some of the things that we're going to then be testing going forward, is refining for readability and flow. So as we've got this performance coming through and we know where we are with the numbers, we're seeing a better click-through rate or better engagement stats or more readability or the dwell time on the blog is longer. So the numbers are performing. We're actually saying the sentiment's improving as well now with that last slide, where we're actually saying, and people are feeling good. Actually, we're getting this brand message through. Everything is kind of really working well. Then we can also just make sure that we're actually ticking the boxes from a potentially a search engine perspective with our readability and our flow. Now, you may well be using something like Grammarly or Hemingway Editor. Those are two very popular AI tools now that will check for readability, for clarity and tone, all those kinds of things that will really help you to understand how you're keeping this thing on track from a brand perspective, because you want to make sure the brand is being, sort of, what's the word, aligned with as much as the actual performance data is working as well. And also at the same time, it's working well for optimizing in terms of search. And that's search from agents as well as from humans. So people will find you, they'll feel good, and then they'll respond. That's what we're now kind of building these three elements as we're going through this optimization. It's getting people to the door, getting them engaged, getting them feeling good, and getting them to respond. Because ultimately, that is really our role, isn't it, if you think about it? So then what we're going to be doing as we start to do this is we're going to be sort of moving through testing some variations. So the kind of the next stage is to say, okay, we know what the baseline is, we know what success looks like, we know that we're kind of building this opportunity for continuous improvement. The AI is now thrown up. We've got a few options here to improve, and it might be that we're shortening the article. It might be that we need to kind of reorder the storytelling or the flow or something, whatever it is that it identifies. We then have a chance then to test some variations. Now, an A/B testing, you probably have heard of split testing, A/B testing, where basically what you're doing is you're taking two versions of the same thing, you're changing one element, so that could be the title or the subject line or maybe the first paragraph. Just one thing is changed, and then you measure and monitor the difference, because one of those is going to perform better or worse than the other one. So that is A/B testing. And then you've got then a very clear view as to which one is then going to be the winner for that particular test. And then you continue to improve and optimize and change and add in little variation. The really cool thing you can do with AI, though, is you are able to, because it's AI, multivariate testing, is you can maybe change two things, maybe change three things, and it will figure it out over time. A/B testing is the really kind of rock solid, really reliable way of doing it, because you can then see and you can test that the AI is actually doing it in the way you think you're doing it. But if you really then supercharge this whole process, multivariate testing, changing a number of things in a particular variation, is also possible to get some good stuff out of the other side. So, you can really, really play with this. But again, always going backwards to thinking, what is my measure of success? I don't want to lose sight of that. I've got to make sure I'm hitting the numbers, but also keeping the sentiment good as well as I test these new variations of content. And I've also then got to be thinking about what does the previous version look like differently to this one, because I'm monitoring this thing and how we're trending our content over time, because I want to watch that graph. Hopefully it's going to start to go sort of up and in a positive direction. But when I do see the dips, because not every variation is going to work, then at least you know why. So it's not that you're looking for success every single time you publish something, but you'll know when certain things don't work as a variation, you'll know why. That's the key when it comes to this stage. And the reason that that's important, and the reason that AI comes into real power here, is for predictive testing. Because everything we've talked about so far is kind of, okay, I'm going to create something that I'm confident, because the AI is helping me, is going to be better than the version before. It's kind of what we're trying to aim for here. But then you sit and wait for it to perform, and then you measure it. The beauty of doing predictive testing with tools like CreativeX or Kantar Link will enable you to predict performance of content before you actually put it out. And this particularly works well in ad performance tracking. So, excuse me. So you can use it for things like social media, but you can also use it for ad creative optimization because it enables you to say, okay, here's a particular piece of content, could be advertising content, so paid content, or here's a piece of organic content that I'm going to push out there. Can you actually predict versus these previous iterations of what we've done, how this one's going to perform? And there will be some things that you could maybe sort of task your little example here with and say, okay, the visual contrast of the imagery, for example, or the CTA visibility, the call to action that is, so the button that you're wanting people to click on as to kind of go to the next stage. Those kinds of things you might decide, actually, I want to test here in advance before I click publish. I want to actually predict how this thing's going to work. And of course, the whole AI thing, where it can almost, because it knows, most AIs are able to use, this large language model approach and actually go forward into the future, knowing all of the campaign testing that it's been trained on, and then look back at your campaign or your piece of content and say, okay, well, based on what we've seen through this million other examples that I got in my database, this is the most likely outcome for this piece of content. So it can predict for you before you press publish what is going to happen. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like now you as a marketer or content creator have got this crystal ball because you can actually say, okay, here's my success measure. This is what I'm focused on. This is the channel. This is my style of content. I've optimized it a few times using AI, and we kind of got it to a point where we think actually now it's really performing. Every time we put some content in, it's kind of really working. But now I want to really push the boat out now, and I want to make this change here. And I want to know predictively how this is going to work before we push it out there. And if you then see an answer that says, actually, it's a little bit questionable as to whether this is going to outperform the previous version, which was our record content, almost went viral, people, and you're not going to then want to do it. So it gives you a chance to maybe play behind the scenes before publishing. So I just wanted to put that step 8 in there, this idea of predictive testing, because it's a really key one. Once you start to play with this, you don't have to do everything in a live environment. We always used to have to. We had to kind of like, oh, I'm going to press publish and oh, I'm going to sit there and I hope this one works. With AI now, you can do it behind the scenes before you publish. So that might give you a little bit of confidence there that if you're looking to really push the boat out and make some significant changes, you'll likely know the probable outcome. It's not the exact outcome. It's not an actual crystal ball that is going to give you a guaranteed answer, but it gives you a chance to get it right before you publish. Step 9 in this kind of testing and iteration stage is personalization and dynamic content. AI enables you to put this kind of almost hyper personalization in to this whole thing because you can create tailored experiences by persona, by customer segment, or by the behavior that you're seeing come through. So if you're sending out different versions of an email, for example, to different segments of your database, you can actually enable tailored experiences to go out very, very specifically, really personalized for each individual audience. And you could, in theory, take this down to a level of 1. So you could actually say if somebody responds in this kind of time frame to this particular message that goes out on this email, and they click this particular button, send them to this point over here. But if they respond an hour later and they click this button over here, send them to that point over there, because there are different behavioral patterns evolving here. So this is getting really, really interesting, isn't it? Because you can then say it's one piece of content goes out, but then what happens then beyond that, based on the speed of response, the behavior, how long they were actually reading that email for before they actually responded, how many times they came back to open it up before they clicked on it. Again, all of this stuff is available to you in like some MailChimp and other tools. Then you can actually be crafting a customer journey as part of this content optimization, which is appropriate to how that particular person behaved. Oh, I'm sat here as I say this, I'm just smiling because I'm thinking, wow, this is only as good as the amount of time and effort and energy I'm willing as a marketer to put in. But if I'm willing to go the hard yards here, the opportunity for this personalization is absolutely there. Interesting stuff, isn't it? So let's kind of see this really then in action. So if you were going to optimize some, say, blog content, what would you actually do? Well, you could analyze some SEO keywords and the content structure. You could maybe then sort of optimize it for AI as well as for human interaction. You'd probably want to be thinking about updating the visuals and maybe link internal pages, etc., etc. All of this stuff testable by these processes. And then potentially then you're going to resubmit it to Google via Search Console for re-indexing. In other words, you're going to say via the Search Console, actually, Google, can you come back and have a look at this page? Because we've been trying to build this thought leadership, and you've seen all our blogs before, and we've kind of done okay, but now look what we've done because we've been taking this optimization seriously. Please come back and have a look at our new performance style. We hope you like it. It's kind of what you're saying to Google there. And of course, then Google will come back. And fingers crossed, you might even get onto the Google Gemini kind of page there because it's now so, so good and so, so strong. So optimizing blog content could be one way you take it. If it's optimizing newsletters, what could you do taking this process through and actually putting this into action? Well, you can use AI subject line testing. There's tools out there which will help you to do that. You obviously, by going through this optimization, you're going to be able to refine the length and readability of the emails and the newsletters that you send out because you've probably been doing it by guesswork. I know I have. Until AI came in, I was kind of thinking it's probably going to feel about this long as a newsletter. And how many kind of paragraphs do I put into the newsletter before I click on the read more, which then directs them to the full article on the website? I don't know. I'm just going to make that up. Whereas actually now we know because we're doing this process. So it's all those kinds of things that we can start to say, okay, I can confidently know now what I'm doing. Same applies, of course, in optimizing in social media. We can generate multiple post variants. Again, do that predictive analytics on them, get them tested before we press publish. And we can schedule and measure in Buffer or later. I mean, you might have your own scheduling platform that you use. And we're going to be testing a whole range of things. These are examples which came out of Sprout Social's engagement benchmark survey. People typically, marketers and content creators, are testing things like the post type. So image versus video versus carousel. And don't just assume because one brand or one particular sector does it one way that it's applying to you. This is about deciding what's relevant to you as a business, you as a brand. So don't take those generic, oh, everybody's going down doing reels. It might not be reels for you, for example. Another thing you can test is obviously the caption tone. I mean, again, playing with this within your brand guidelines, you might find that informative versus, say, playful or entertaining, informative could be the answer. And you say, well, but hold on, we've always been a brand that kind of is this kind of style. And now we're actually seeing that we get a better click through, we get a better engagement by doing it in this style. This is our new tone of voice. It could change everything, is what we're saying here. And of course, then this kind of plays out through all of the channels that you can be thinking about, including web and landing pages. So ultimately, when we're talking about content optimization using AI tools, it isn't just that front end awareness building, the emails, the blogs, the social media. It is also deeper into the journey. You can use these step-by-step approaches for your website landing pages. So you can test headlines, you can test layout, button copy. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are sort of used to using heat maps to see where people are moving around your web pages and see where they kind of dwell or spend time, and obviously what they click on, and also what they've seen before they just decide to click. All of those things using tools like, say, Hotjar can enable you to actually apply the learnings. So move your calls to action higher, maybe shorten the forms, maybe simplify the design. So you've got this all singing, all dancing web page that served you really well, but now you're seeing people's attention span is shrinking. So therefore, we've got to continuously improve and optimize what we do. So by thinking that we've always done it this way, it's always worked, is actually now, from what we're seeing here, probably not the correct answer. And even if you're getting 50, 60, 70% click-throughs and you're thinking, wow, we're best in class, Maybe you could move those up to 70, 80, or 90% by following a process like this. So there's a huge amount of opportunity here that's probably hiding in plain sight, is kind of what we're saying here. And so, having identified the content type, those success measures, where you're starting from, you've gone through this process of using some tools to do this deep dive and this kind of improvement of the tiniest detail. Sometimes it is the tiniest detail. What you need to do then is think about how can I consistently review and report this on an ongoing basis. And this is where I'm going to use that phrase continuous improvement. And in fact, I would actually call it now a continuous improvement loop, because optimization is never done. Let's say that you're going to do this review monthly. So you're going to take a step back, you're going to get a cup of coffee, and you're going to sit there with your AI and with the data, and you're going to say, right, let's work together. Let's actually create an analytics report that doesn't just talk about the numbers, but actually talks about how these numbers are going to inform what we'll do differently next time. And you can rerun underperforming assets through AI scoring, do that predictive analytics. You can share your findings across various teams who need to be involved. So if you've got a product team, maybe you've got a content team, marketing team, or an agency. If there are others who need to know, tell them the process that you're doing. Explain to them that this is all about continuous improvement and that every single time you send something out, there needs to be either a variation of that that's going out somewhere differently, or that you're actually going to be just changing something to test if you can get a little upturn or a little kick on from the version you had before. Never rest on your laurels. Never just sit there thinking, hey, we've sussed this. Because I can tell you, I can guarantee you there's improvement opportunities to be had in here. And so what you can do is you can then start to think about, could we actually optimize this stuff in real time then? Because if we're using AI, maybe we don't have to wait until the monthly report. Maybe we could actually do some stuff in real time and then maybe actually change stuff by watching. If we were doing, say, a blog post or something like that, maybe we start to use our AIs to suggest improvements that we actually then shape up and actually publish in real time. So maybe for the next hour, we have this version of the blog. Then maybe using AI, we kind of refine it and improve it. And then maybe we publish again and we use something like, say, Google Analytics, the real-time reporter there to see, okay, in the next hour, how is that blog actually, is that blog actually performing? So you could actually do stuff in real time. And particularly if you're doing a big ticket, high sort of highly important campaign, this could be very interesting. Obviously, we're approaching times now where some of the seasonal campaigns and stuff will be cutting in if you're a seasonal business. So therefore, doing this stuff in real time might be a game changer. If you've never done real-time analytics and watching and using AI and then changing stuff and seeing how it responds, this could be the year you do it. This could be the moment that you change everything. So rather than just, hey, we've done our campaign, push it out there, a month later, see how the campaign went, actually say, no, I'm going to sit live with this campaign and we're going to actually monitor it. We're going to tune it as we go. And as we see things going better or less good, we're going to fine tune it step by step by step. So it's a live campaign being monitored and adapted and tuned live in real time. Because of course we can. We've got the support of the AI tools. And of course, then you could actually then start to, and again, we've seen examples from, say, live events, for example, where you get live polls or you get some kind of reflection prompt or you get some kind of feedback loop going here where it isn't just the back office, the back end content that's being tested here. Maybe you ask the audience. Maybe if they're in a certain scenario, or it's a certain kind of campaign where you're looking for feedback, maybe ask the audience. And of course, the interesting thing with that one is then you can then discuss as part of this, what's the next step we're going to take? If we can't afford to be doing this real time, but actually we're going to now improve our reporting and our dashboard kind of analytics and stuff from a monthly basis to a weekly basis, because it probably seems like we could and we probably should if we want to get the best result. Why don't we continuously improve this more often than we would ever do? Then you can discuss what immediate step will we take this week to improve next week's data. So there's always exercises you can do. It's just taking this step-by-step approach, knowing what success looks like, and then starting to really embed optimization as a concept in as a routine. It is part of what you do. So if you create any form of content for your own personal brand, for your business, if you're a content creator and that's your full-time role, building this kind of a mindset in where you analyze, you adjust, you test, you measure, you learn, that's a key one, and then you repeat. Each loop will increase the relevance and engagement, i.e., the performance of what you're doing. This is super important. Back in the day, I could not have talked to you about this because it would have been, yeah, but Neil, hold on, that's going to be a full-time job in itself. These AI tools are doing it literally sat next to you. They're doing it. You're hybrid working now with these AI tools that enable you to do this with very little, if any, additional workload for you as a human. And that's the big upside here. This stuff is working in collaboration with you, making your job easier, making your performance far, far stronger. And so, what I'd recommend you do is we're kind of pulling all this thing kind of now sort of into almost like an optimization plan, is I would suggest that here are some things that you could focus on if you wanted to run this and try and embed this into your daily habits as a marketer or as a communicator or as a content creator. What I would suggest you do is create a 7-day optimization plan where on each of the days you start to add in some additional actions, some additional tools, and you start to kind of build this into your workflow, into your process of content creation. So your content creation now isn't just about I create content, but it's I create optimized content that continuously improves every time I create it. And I've got the tools alongside me that mean it isn't just me doing it. So it doesn't actually take me very much extra time, but the value I get out, what I know about how my content is performing, is the absolute upside of this. This is where content optimization using AI tools scores. And so I would recommend that you start to plot out, maybe run with this 7-day optimization plan, maybe take a screen grab of this or take some quick notes and say, okay, well, there it is. That is the plan. I'm just going to do this and see what happens, or adjust it for your own particular needs. I mean, there may well be things in here that you don't need to use because they're not tools that are going to serve the channels that you currently use. But maybe playing and exploring is the way to go here. So to round this off, I would suggest the key takeaways here is to really think about this. And I just kind of sort of said this a little bit kind of just in the flow of my narrative here, but I just want to stop and pause on this thought and just for a moment, is that optimization is the bridge between creativity and performance. It's that thing that kind of sits in between. I produce stuff and then things happen. It's that bit in between that says, I produce great stuff and this amazing things happen. This is the optimization bit. This is the bit where you and your AI sit between creativity, the content that you're creating, and the performance, the outcome that that content then stimulates. So that's what optimization is and where it sits. And I would say it's a mindset. I would say, yes, it is a set of tools. Yes, it is a process. And we've gone step by step through this to kind of build up, kind of the steps that you need to take. But more than all of that, it's a mindset. It's always about saying, not that my content's not good, but my content could always be better. And by better, we play back to those success metrics. If it's building my brand, if it is selling more product or service, if it is just building value for my community, then whatever your success criteria are, this optimization mindset helps you to deliver that success. With an AI spin to it, the second point really is that AI will amplify the insight and experimentation. But you are always going to be there to provide the direction and the judgment because those key success measures, they're yours. They're not the AI's. The AI is just a tool currently. Might not always be this way, but it currently is just a tool. So it is there to help you. It's there to do this stuff by your side. So you've now got a team member, you've got an AI optimizer for what it is you're looking to deliver, but you are still in charge. You're doing the final decisions, you're doing the direction and the judgment. So it's the accountability stops with you, not the AI. So that's an important thing to remember. But it's never going to sleep. It's always going to be watching and it's always there, willing and able to help you. So the final point then really is to refine, test, measure, repeat. Refine the content that you're doing, test everything, absolutely test everything. And if you can, do the predictive testing with your AI, because if you know what's going to work better before you press publish, well, that's a really nice situation to be in, isn't it? Then measure, evaluate, and repeat the best bits that you see coming out there. Every improvement, little incremental improvement, compounds your results and builds confidence in your strategy. And it genuinely does. The more you do this, the more you realize these are little 1% incremental improvements. It's an evolution, not a revolution. And that's the big key here. Once you get that into your mindset, once you build this habit around, I can do better, I can do better, I can do better, the performance of your organization, the performance of your brand, the performance of everything about you in work will benefit. Everything will improve. It doesn't mean you're going to get success every time, but the mindset enables you to learn from when it isn't successful, why it wasn't. And that's the key, because the biggest learnings obviously come when it isn't successful, but you will get on balance more successful outcomes than you will have got before just by paying this level of attention. So embrace your AI, think about the tools that you need, figure out how and where you can focus this in on, and do one example. Don't try and do this across everything. Just do one example, going through these steps and see how it goes. I will almost guarantee that you will be enlightened by what comes through and what happens here. As I say, it might not be instant success every time, but your level of understanding about how and why your content performs as it does, that's the bit that is going to be a real enabler for you going forward. And that is content optimization using AI tools.